Commission meeting to order. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call.
Steve Houston.
Here.
Dean Judd.
Here.
Fred Miter.
Here.
Gordon Machado.
Here.
Jerry Fisher.
Here.
Douglas Jackson is absent. Anthony Garcia.
Here.
And I am here.
Okay. Okay, verification of agenda posting.
It was posted appropriately. I don't have the sheet with me.
Okay. Okay, public input. Do we have any public input?
Yeah.
I guess we don't have any public input, correct? No. Okay, we'll move on to reports. Airport manager's report.
You missed number 5.
Oh, consent. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Approve the minutes of the Airport Commission special meeting June 19th, 2013. Do we have any discussion, comments?
I move we accept the minutes as written.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
I know, I read it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Okay, public input, I've already covered that. Number 7, reports, airport manager report.
Good evening. We gave the air show report to the city council, as I told you guys I would after I gave the report to you first. At that meeting, we received lots of praise for the job that was done out there. And luckily, or finally, they thanked the volunteers as much as they were thanking me, so I'm rubbing off on them. So once again, I thank all the volunteers that participated and helped. They were very happy about the air show. Obviously, they want to do another air show. And the direction I received from them was, despite your wishes, was to move the dates. They wish to see an item at the next council meeting, which is August 5th, moving the dates to Father's Day. It was explained to them that the Airport Commission had a 5-1 vote not to move the dates, but the City Council feels otherwise. So as a result, I prepared the item. It was attached to go ahead and move the stuff, and that will be presented to the council on August 5th. And in the report I give them, I will remind them that you folks had a 5-1 vote not to move it. But so
Is Father's Day the third Sunday?
I think it's the second weekend.
This is the second here, though. So is it on Father's Day or not?
No, it's Father's Day.
Is it? I think the third Sunday's always been Father's Day. And that doesn't, 15 doesn't seem right.
I'll double check because I pulled up a calendar for 2014, but I'll double check.
I may be wrong. Be the first time, though. Good.
You know, another potential date would be Columbus Day in October. But
I would recommend against that because then you're getting into Watsonville, Salinas Air Show time, and I'd rather go to the others or spend my air show dollar there. You know what I mean? So, anyway.
okay.
I won't be at yours. Okay, item 2 is reserve accounts update. Included in your packet was an appropriation adjustment form, and the money has been transferred into the reserve accounts for last fiscal year. $30,000 went into the FAA matching funds, which is double of what the minimum would be to ensure that we get our entitlement funds. Our entitlement funds are $150,000. So we put, and we have to come up with 10%, which would be 15,000. And as I indicated, we'd put double in that, so we were always guaranteed to be able to receive those entitlement funds. So 30,000 went into there, and then 15,000 went into the other 3 accounts that were set up.
On balance.
Can I ask, all right, if I ask a question?
Go ahead, yes.
Do you offhand know what the amounts in these funds are now? Can you let us know?
The only one that would have something other than 15,000 would be the FA one. And I want to say that should be about 393, but none of the matching fund for the project that we just did has come out yet. So about 248, I think, has to come out of that 393.
So it'll be about 150 left.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then again, this budget, we also transferred the 850 in there.
Yeah, okay.
So it's going to be roughly about $1 million.
The others are all just 15,000 each now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
I do have one more little brief item that wasn't put on the agenda, but just as you know, Clint retired, or he didn't retire, but he moved on. And we, as of Monday, we have an interim city manager, Bill Avera, just so everybody knows.
Okay, move on to old business, drainage construction update.
Project's done. We have the closeout meeting today. There's some billing left to get caught up. We're holding on to the retention, obviously, through the warranty period. But as far as construction out there, it is complete. They delivered the lighted X's to us today. They are stored inside the building. They washed them up and serviced them before they turned them back over to us, made sure everything was good, so I appreciated that. We have some manuals that we'll be receiving in final construction drawings, but as far as any effect to operations out there, it's done. In addition to that, part of the project identified an area that was not within the scope of the project where we had some drainage pipes that were damaged and destroyed. We have gone ahead and replaced that ourselves with force account funds. Cost all of $400. We used our new backhoe to do it, and we popped them right into place. And so now the safety area down at the corner of 2-4 is restored. You may have noticed there was a notch in the ditch that got pretty close to the runway. So that's all been taken care of, and it's all done.
You mentioned the backhoe. I know you mentioned it to me, but I don't know if you mentioned it to the commission.
Oh, the water department was surplusing a backhoe. It needed about $1,500 worth of work to restore it to working order for our purposes. So I got it delivered to the airport. I had the $1,500 worth of work done, and now we have a backhoe. I mean, it wouldn't run all day, but it works for what we needed to do. So.
Why didn't the city keep it?
The water department purchased a new one.
Oh. Okay. That's good, good for us. Okay. Okay, new business, building 16 refurbishment and code compliance.
Building 16 will be the restaurant. Finally got possession of the restaurant about July 6th or so. We went in, we removed the carpet that was in the dining area, and pleasantly surprised to find no tiles underneath it, just concrete floor, which was good news, excellent news. The kitchen area, we removed all the non-compliant sinks out of there. The water heater was failing and leaking, so we removed that with the intention of putting a new water heater in. I contacted a steam cleaner guy to get all the grease out of there, but he kind of ran when he saw the scope of the work, so still got to figure out how I'm going to pull that one off. There are portions of the business that are missing now, or portions of airport property that were removed before the restaurant became into our possession. So I'm working on a final accounting in order to go after the previous tenants to get that stuff, or at least the money back for the stuff that belonged to the airport that's gone.
What were some of the items?
There was a shed, a pergola out front, and the fire extinguishing system for the hood system is missing. Those were the three biggies. There's some other stuff that occurred that I'm just going to let go, but there's some minor vandalism and other stuff, but anyway.
And do we have a tenant ready to move in when it's fixed up, or?
We need to discuss fixing it up. We do have somebody who's interested in the property, but we need to go over some stuff. So in my inspection, I identified the roof as being an issue. The rafter tails, which would be the portion of the roof that supports the sheeting that the roofing material is on, that extend beyond the building, are rotten back to the building and in places inside of the building, which will require replacement. They are severely rotten. In fact, areas are totally gone. According to the roofer, because I didn't have enough gets to get up there myself, the area around the air conditioner where the air conditioner was condensing is all rotten, and all that will have to be replaced. So ultimately, the roofer I had out there told me it would be $40,000 for a new roof and $20,000 to replace all the rotten wood under the roof. So $60,000 just to get the roof up to speed. We have to remove all the HVAC off this roof and then reinstall it all. So that's one item. The kitchen is coming in at about $20,000 to do the improvements that the health department wants, maybe. I finally identified a floor that should meet their requirements. I'm still waiting on a sample of it to take out there to get final approval from them. This particular material, it's kind of like, just going to say aquarium rock. It's probably much finer than that. And they mix it with an epoxy, and then they trowel it onto the floor, and they trowel it up the walls so that they have the one-piece coving, all integrated floor for the kitchen area. This material is acceptable in many different counties in the state of California to be used in food service areas and commercial kitchens and industrial kitchens or institutional kitchens, except ours. Apparently what's good for LA County and Alameda County and Santa Clara County may not be good enough for our county. So I'm working on getting that approved to see if that will work. As far as the sinks and the water heaters and all that needs to go into the kitchen area, that's going to run another $10,000. So ultimately, to take care of just the kitchen, you're looking at 20 grand. Then we need to do the bathrooms. The bathrooms would be an additional $20,000 to go ahead and rehab those and get those as ADA compliant as possible. We'll have to replace the doors, some of the walls, all the fixtures in there, and et cetera. And then finally, the dining room itself, we'll need to put a floor down in there and paint the place. We'll have to replace the lighting in there because it was removed for some unknown reason. That's another $10,000 that we'll have to spend. When you come up to a project which is that kind of money, it has to go through the engineering department to go out to bid. It's a public contract and all that good stuff, and that's a minimum 10% of whatever the project's going to cost. So ultimately, best case scenario, you're looking at about $120,000 to rehab the building, and worst case scenario, about $140,000.
Say that again?
Worst case scenario, $140,000.
120.
That does not solve some of the electrical problems, and that does not go into the sewer lines. And having, I don't know if we want to scope those out and see if there's problems there or not. I kind of stopped spending money until I kind of heard from you guys. But I would recommend that we scope out the sewer lines and see what's going on, because they're back to 1942. So there could be a problem there, which could be even more money to dig them up and repair them. I know there have been problems, plumbing problems in that place, as reported by the sheriff to me. So, his own personal experience. So, then we need to examine, rents. We were currently getting about $1,200 a month. A rehab facility, market-wise, could probably do as well as $2,500 a month, pushing it, which means to recoup that in 5 years, the rent, I'm sorry, let's go back to the $140,000. To recoup $140,000 in 5 years, we're looking at about $3,500 a month rent, and it's not going to work. So at about $2,500 a month rent, we could put about $60,000 into the building, which means we can do all the health department stuff, or we can do the roof. So I don't know what your thoughts are. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Once I get your thoughts, I was going to take them to council and get some direction from them. But at this point, I don't know if it makes sense to try to rehab that building.
Can I make a
Yes,
comment,
go
or
ahead.
question, comment, whatever? $2,500 a month is $30,000 a year.
Yes.
Okay. Times 5 years is
But-
150,000. So what are you saying?
No, $1,200 a month, because you're not going to count the original rent.
Well, you can't rent it the way it is now. The rental value now is at zero,
Yeah.
other than storage.
But my numbers were just the increase to cover it.
Okay, but at this point, starting
Yeah.
with what we got, I mean, the other thing we do is don't do anything
Yes, that is correct.
with no rent, basically. So in order to, if we could rent it, do the work, rent it for $2,500, then we'd be bringing in $30,000 a year, roughly, less, I'm sure, some costs, but, so, okay, thank you.
So what's the going rate downtown for something similar?
About 2,500, 3,000.
Because that restaurant's been there forever. It's been a tradition. A lot of people fly in and would be ashamed to not have something there.
There were other alternatives suggested were to go to a food truck model. I'm not excited about that one because I
No,
chase
not
food
at all.
trucks all over town. But I wasn't excited about that one at all. The other option would be to try to construct a new facility somewhere.
You were talking about doing one or the other? Enough money to do one or the other, the inside or the roof? Don't you really have to do them both, or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
can't
got to
one
do
or
all
the
of it.
Well, the construction of a new building would cost us
It would cost a lot more.
3-4 times the amount that we would spend on this building.
But you're getting a new building which will have a lifespan a lot more than this building will if you put a Band-Aid on it. Kind of like the Elks Lodge roof argument. So,
So you say you would tear down this building and put a new one up in place of it? Same place?
or look for a new location,
And what would happen with this building?
demolish it.
Is the airport on a sewer system now?
Yes.
So the septic tanks are gone?
Yeah, all the septics are gone.
Is this flooring estimate, If you did it, what you're saying, then the whole package would be out to bid?
Yeah, everything would have to go out to bid.
My
Anything
question-
that's over 5,000 legally has to go out to bid.
5,000?
Yeah.
More than that, isn't it?
It's California State Contractors Code that revised in 2007.
I was concerned about the flooring where it's going out of Union City. I would assume there's somebody in the area.
I can answer that question. Talked to the floors here in town, the ones that were open would answer the phone or open their door. And effectively, Armstrong Flooring, which is the biggest maker of linoleum, which would be an acceptable product, has banned their product from going into commercial kitchens because people slip and they sue them. So none of the installers will install their product in a kitchen. And one of the biggest flooring people in town, that's what they carry. I contacted another product that would work. It's that rubber flooring with the circles for the traction on it. I contacted that manufacturer, which is in the Bay Area, but they refused to give me a distributor or an installer so I could get a price. So apparently they don't want us to use their product. It really has not been easy.
You know, it seemed like there was problems downtown with Elegant Touch and the market, whatever the name is now. And they came through all right with some method. You know, I don't know who did it. And maybe it was out of town.
Would we be able to get a commitment?
And if it goes out to bid, it's all going to be from
Yeah.
out of town.
Would we be able to get a tentative commitment from someone that would be interested in running that business, and to basically say, yeah, we can live with $2,000 or $2,500 a month and make a profit?
I could try. The problem is we don't have a product that's worth that amount to show them. You know, you're trying to sell them a dream or a vision or something, and you know, people are reluctant to jump at that, but I could certainly try.
Well, all these values are really all ballparks. But to make a decision, we'd have to get some bids.
Yes, and my understanding of the California Contracts Code is you can't go out to bid for something unless you have the money to pay for it. You intend to pay for it. Otherwise, you're bidding facetiously or falsely, and that's against the law.
You can't put a cap on the bid you accept?
No.
The government's different.
Yeah.
There's a private sector and the government sector. It's different, totally.
Yeah, the California Contracts Code is truly a scary document. What you can do is if there's a certain percentage over the engineer's estimate, then you can declare all the bids non-responsive and do it again, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'm not asking for a decision tonight, but, you know, it's kind of what are your feelings? What is your gut feeling? Do you want to try to make this work? We have the money in the bank to do it, but we're going to be severely dipping into the reserves of the airport to pay for this. And is this where we want that much of the reserves to go? Because it's going to be at least half of our reserves to pay for this.
Mr. Chairman, I just don't think it's right for government to subsidize private enterprise, to compete with private enterprise. So if it's going to cost $500,000, then we have to recover the $500,000. I don't think we can go in lower and subsidize a tenant. A little bit like that.
I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
No, I'm just saying that I don't think government should subsidize private enterprise. They should be on their own.
If I can try to get clarification of
We have a speaker card on the subject?
what's
Yes,
going
we
on
do.
here. Are you saying that that the rent we get isn't enough to pay back the investment?
Right.
That we shouldn't do it? Is that what you're trying to say?
I guess basically, I'd say if it costs 500,000, we can
Well,
only get.
he hadn't mentioned 500,000.
No, I'm just throwing out a figure. If had 500,000, and all we can get out of it over a reasonable period of time is 400,000, then we're subsidizing that rent by 100,000. So
I
you're
think we'd have-
subsidizing.
Well, we have to decide if there's some other benefit that we're getting.
We have to look at
Besides
long-term
that.
here. We can't look at just 5 years. Look at the hangars. They're about 50 years old and they're still bringing in money. And this
Well-
building, if we put it up, will bring in money for another 50 years.
I'm
So
not
that's
talking
another
about-
way to look at it, right?
And I think I agree with your principle that we shouldn't be subsidizing private business, just in general, because that means that people with hangars are
Understand what-
subsidizing private business, and they're not thrilled with that. But
That's not what I said.
I'm trying to understand if this is that kind of a case. I mean,
Well, on Fred's comment, don't look at a 50-year lifespan. You need to plan on a 20-year lifespan.
Even 20 years.
I think
just
normal
screwed that up.
recovery has been 10 years
Yeah,
in private sector.
yeah. But as far as the roof needing to be replaced again on a flat roof like that, that's a 20-year roof, maximum. With all that HVAC up there, you're not going to get 20 years out of it because you got holes all over the place.
so you're saying in private business, a 10-year
10-year
recovery of
cost,
your
yeah.
investment
Where, yeah, property owner.
is kind of typical?
10 years, so then we could probably
So-
recover it then.
If we're renting it, is 2,500 reasonable? Do you think we could get
I
2,500?
think it's pushing it, but we could try.
Well, if you've
I'll
got
do my
2,000,
best.
if you've got 2,000, that's 24,000 a year, or $240,000 in 10 years.
Yeah.
So if you're spending under
All right.
240, you're we're talking 140 or 150. It sounds like it's a reasonable investment for anybody, in theory, right? Yeah.
I think it would be a shame not to look at fixing the building and getting it rented as soon as possible. Building a new building would take a year to get through the planning commission.
Well, if we talk new building, you're talking, yeah, I mean, 5 years probably to get through the planning commission.
There's a brotherhood here somewhere, I think.
And, I mean, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right, that we don't have.
Well, and that we're not going to be able to get back because we still rent it for $2,000, $25, maybe a little better.
Well, a new facility could be bigger because expanding the dining room's really not going to cost you a lot. Where the money is on a new facility is the kitchen, as always. It's going to be the grease interceptors,
So
All
a
the
new facility is, what are we talking about there?
say the 5 to the 750 range.
But could a tenant make enough money to cover that? You know, that's the real question
That's a
is,
little
can we
spooky.
have a big enough draw for that tenant to be able to make that rent?
Does anybody else in town do that?
We have a speaker card.
Okay. Sure.
Quest?
Yes.
Westridge Life Hollister. I just was thinking, during you guys talking about this, just some ideas that might be worth looking into. So Mike, you talked about other locations for the restaurant. Did you have any ideas?
One, the area over by DK Turbines.
The grassy knoll?
Not the whole area, but half
Yeah.
of it.
So that's what I was thinking too about. Now, if you just, I was thinking about a lot of other airports that you find, you've got sometimes a nice building that has like a ground floor that's like an FBO, and then the restaurant's above it. So there might be something to think about there where you've got a
Now
combined.
you're at 1.3.
Huh?
Now you're at 1.3 because you're talking
1.3 million.
elevators and everything else.
Elevators? Got elevators?
ADA.
Yeah. Well, think big if you're going to think, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, again, you have a structure that's got two separate things in it where you can get, or other offices or whatever. And are there anyone, for instance, Hugh built the hangar there, I mean, because he wanted it and because it was going to be lucrative for him, I suppose. Would there be any point in looking at other investors who would be able to, again, you're talking about going out to a private source, but that person would have it for a certain length of time and then it would deed over to the city?
I'm open to that.
we
No
talk to
one's
Hugh?
come through the
you
door in
talked to
the
Hugh?
5 years I've been sitting out there.
Because Hugh's got the big plan, for over on the other side. Maybe this would be something he'd be interested in. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know.
No, I haven't talked to you, but I can.
I was just thinking about it in terms of what I've seen at other places where you've got the best use of space. You're very efficient, so you got something on the ground. Could be, I don't know, who knows what, hangars, FBO, whatever, and then something up above, and then there's a view out from the restaurant. I mean, I'm talking about down the road because it would take a while, but it's, I don't know if you guys know, but I was, I haven't been spending as much time at the airport, but it's a ghost airport now. I mean, because, it's so quiet, nobody's flying in. And that, I came back, I did skydiving here for the first time in '92, and I ate at Dingling. So it's been a fixture, and people know, and people come in, and now it's, even if you got the thing fixed up and rented, it'd take a while for people to realize there's something there. I don't know how long you're talking about if you do all these fixes that you're talking about. 3 months, 2 months, 6 months?
Past experience with other agencies that are involved, you're looking at a year.
A year before it could even have a tenant in there again?
Absolutely.
Really? Yeah. So. And then you're looking at, like you said, how long if you're going to build a new structure, even if you built it someplace else out there?
I'd say 2.5.
And who was the fellow who was going to build the big maintenance hangar on the grassy knoll, Rubino?
That was Ed Noel.
Oh.
That's no longer viable.
Oh,
The grassy knoll has reverted back to the city.
I see.
Their option has expired.
So, I mean, I don't have any real concrete ideas, just throwing ideas out there because it'd be a shame if we didn't get anything else out there and it kind of just, sputtered to a stop and nothing got done. But I guess you can think in terms of the short term and then the very long term about maybe getting the building fixed up for the short term and then thinking about something for the long term. Although, I mean, that restaurant was good as like a greasy spoon or kind of a, just a breakfast lunch place, but it had to be a really good place to be able to stick it out, indefinitely. So, as attract people as a gourmet place. So anyway, that's just some ideas to think about.
Thank you. So, any discussion by the members?
You said we talked about a land lease, though. I mean, you have yours is all preliminary right now.
Yeah, I've hoped that Chili's would walk through the door and say, I'd like to put a Chili's there where the Building 25 was ever since I got out there, but that hasn't happened. And we've actually contacted a few restaurants like that to see if they would be interested, because it's relatively close to 156 as a draw, but we do not meet the demographics for their business models, is what we've been told. And actually, Chili's was one of the chains we contacted.
Are other airports in the area been successful?
Watsonville was closed for a while, and they just did a rehab and reopened. I haven't been out there since we haven't been out there since it reopened, but, and I actually need to get over there and see the airport manager, but I don't know what they're getting rent-wise or anything else.
Well, what I was thinking is maybe there's a successful one in the area that would be interesting in opening another restaurant.
Running Rooster south or north?
Yeah, the one in Watsonville just recently changed hands, I think about a year ago, was it? In fact, he was at the air show with flyers and pushing his restaurant.
See, we were on the ground floor of the project, that is. Gotta talk to these, get rid of these air talk.
So, do you want me to put together a scope of work for the bid package, spend a little bit of time doing that, and get an engineer's estimate? And
I'd like to see that,
go from there?
as far as refurbishing it.
What's
You
that?
know,
What is it?
I think it would be a shame and a mistake to not do anything about it.
Okay, and just so there's full disclosure, that could cost $4,000 or $5,000 for the engineering department to do that. So, just as long as
I think it's
everybody
money well
understands
spent.
all of it, I can try to get them to do that.
I think one of the things that we need to come to a decision on is, do we want a restaurant at the airport, yes or no?
I personally think it'd be a mistake not to have one.
So do I agree.
I agree with that, too. I think we need something there.
Other one.
We have another speaker
Don't sit
Please.
down.
on the same subject.
Quick service here.
Does anybody else on the commission want to comment on their feelings about having a restaurant or no restaurant?
We'll take a vote, yes or no, in a few minutes.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Bill Bush.
How you doing, Bill?
I bought Hollister Soaring from Quest. And I think that at this point in time, the airport would do better if we had a MASH tent at this moment, serving pancake breakfast, and we're losing a lot of business. Quest brought up, a very valid point. It's been dead. We've had several people on a daily basis coming through the door asking about the dingling. I'm still not sure why it closed. I mean, I've looked at what's been done in there, and I don't see, I heard there were floor issues, and I've heard all kinds of different statements, but the bottom line is I know that there are guys not flying in here on weekends now that were buying gas, that were, working with us in terms of that, we had a lot of advertisement in the dingling, and I've noticed a tremendous slack of people coming over on a Saturday or a Sunday for a sailplane ride. So it's financially hurting the airport and having this operation there. And my comment about a MASH tent's not a joke. It would be nice to have, it's the extreme, but I'd rather have a restaurant there. It certainly is a draw to the airport, and it's important to us. It's important to me as a business owner there, and I'm really concerned on why the place was shut down in the first place. I mean, could we have done some Band-Aids to keep it there, to keep our businesses flowing the way we're used to, or not? And I don't think that we've really gotten down to the nitty-gritty on this. But as a person who is paying to be at this airport, it has affected my business. And I don't see anyone here coming, I'm hearing these huge numbers to fix the place up, and I find it's the most expensive numbers I've ever heard for doing, and my wife and I, Sharon, have done a lot of construction work, and I'm not saying that they're not true to fact here in California, but I could get a lot of that work done in Vermont for a lot cheaper. All right,
Top of
I'm
my
just,
mind.
I'm just calling a spade a spade,
I believe that.
but it is definitely hurting us. That's all I have to say, I guess.
Thank you. Well, if
All
the
right.
commission wants me to go into specifics about why it was closed, I would actually, I'll try to keep in general, but, yeah, some of it you don't want me to go into. But the health department has written up the restaurant for facility issues. They had non-compliant sinks. The floors were non-compliant. And the bathrooms, they're requiring a remodel in. It's really hard to put the floors in with all the equipment in there, stoves and everything else. It's not something that they can work around. So,
Was the bathrooms their issue, or was it the city's issue? Were they public bathrooms, or were they?
the whole facility is a city issue because it's a public facility.
Okay, so it wasn't that they weren't in compliance, it was the building wasn't.
No, the building is not in compliance. The building was, I don't know if you know the history of it, but it was originally a 1942 naval brig for the Navy base. Then it became a bomb shelter and explosive storage area. And then along the lines, they demolished the concrete walls in there that were the cells and turned it into a restaurant. The codes have magnified. In fact, we were just discussing before the meeting the impact of code regulation changes on small airports. There's a new report out that I am going to be sharing with the commission. And unfortunately, the revenue to pay for all those new requirements isn't there. So, Dave, you didn't write down what you want to talk about, restaurant?
Hey, the speaker.
Do you mind if I address that one statement, though?
Please.
Be
Okay,
recorded.
the point that I'm making is,
Yeah.
we're talking about sinks and a floor.
You have to go to the podium, please.
People at TV can't hear you.
Comb your hair. Comb your hair.
It's being recorded.
That being said, again, I'm Bill Bush. That being said, would it have made more financial sense for the airport to consider doing the fixes that were necessary than to sit here tonight and talk about a $500,000 new building? Couldn't we have done some Band-Aids, put in some new sinks for them, the city take care of the men's, the facilities, bathroom facilities for ADA compliance or whatever, which they're responsible for, but couldn't we have done something to go in there and fix this thing with the current tenants and continue the flow of business here at Hollister? And I'm talking, if you're talking a year out, a solid year out for another restaurant, that's sad, because all these pilots that come in every weekend that come in for breakfast are now going to go to Watsonville. They're going to pick a different airport, and habitually they're going to sit down and forget about Hollister because it doesn't exist once they find a new deal. And I feel compelled to tell you that a couple of Band-Aids and a couple of fixes and some other issues that none of us have talked about here tonight that we kind of know about, they should have been rectified, and these people should have been, I mean, we put 7 people on the streets. And it was, this is an economic time that people cannot afford to be put out of business. We can't be. We're being put out of business by our own personal government right now.
That Dingling moved downtown.
They moved downtown, but they were forced to move. She wants to stay. She wanted to stay at the airport. They were forced to leave. If anyone here wants to tell me that they left on their own accord, I'd be shocked.
The city of Hollister terminated their lease.
They didn't have a lease when they were terminated, what I understand.
In California, if your lease expires, it's a month-to-month lease. It still is a lease.
Okay, so,
And the city of Hollister terminated its lease.
all right, well, I don't have a lease.
You have a month-to-month lease.
I've never signed a lease. I do not have a lease. I've been there since March 1st. I don't have a lease, Mike.
So could I interrupt if I may? I understand, sir, that you say what could have been done, but we're faced tonight with where we are, and there's nothing we could possibly do that would bring them back any faster than what's going to happen. I mean, I apologize if you're unhappy about this, and I understand, and I'm glad you're speaking up, because we do need to hear from people like you.
Okay,
But when you talk about couldn't we have done something, you're talking about in the past. And we can't deal with the past. The past is done. We are where we are today. So we need to look at what's best to go forward. So I'm just saying.
well, I appreciate that. I
Okay.
just feel that
I understand you're
it was
kind
a
of venting, I
convenience not
understand.
to. But my question is, while I'm here, I don't have a lease,
Well,
and I'm not, who am I
it's
supposed to?
kind of another
This is the
topic, I
airport
think.
commission, correct? And I'd like to know why I bought a business March 1st, and I still don't have a lease.
That's another subject.
Hold on, that's fine. I'll relinquish the stand, but this stuff's important to me. I guess I could be broomed any moment out of there too.
But the whole point that's why I said it's out of order. The whole point is that by government code and everything else that we have to abide by, if the subject is not on the agenda, so we have to curtail it because the general public has to know what's published and has a right to come here and talk. So if we change the subject,
I'm sorry.
going into different codes, and that's all I'm arguing about this. We had a code here, the violation of those codes were there, and we're government. The government, the one that has to enforce codes, and you can't enforce codes on yourself. You let a tenant go,
Okay.
the building go bad, or the tenant go bad, wherever the case may be. If the government allows that, then how can you turn around and force private enterprise and say, you're in violation of the code? And they say, well, at the airport they are too, and you do a damn thing about it,
Okay.
So that's why you have to do something,
Okay. Isn't there a public part of this agenda that is open to the public to talk about? Because I'm public.
Well, then there's a public input part of an agenda that gives you the right to input what you have to say. But the government body, because it's not agendized, cannot react to that.
Right.
We'll have to agendize your concern at the next meeting to discuss it back and forth. You can come and make an input, but that's all we can do. is
Well, I'd like
accept
to
it.
make an inquiry on that. I'd like to know why I don't have a lease at this airport from the day I started. And I think it's important that you all inform me on why I don't have a lease that shows after 20 years of this business being in Hollister. I'd like to know why I'm not. And if that needs to be put on an agenda, that's fine. But I'd like to know why I don't have a lease that shows that I'm legitimately there, and I don't have to go month to month and worry about someone asking my business to leave. So if we could do that, I'm sorry to bring up the other case, but it kind of ties in with, they didn't have a lease, they got asked to leave. I don't have a lease, when am I gonna get asked to leave?
Okay.
Is that a fair question?
No, yeah, and I agree, but all I'm saying is that it has to be agendatized, so at the end of the meeting, there's a portion there that says, what do you want to add to the next month's agenda? And so certainly we can add that to next month's agenda and discuss your lease.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Already been added.
I'm sorry.
Already has been added.
David Leonardo, Gavilan Aviation. I hadn't considered somebody else's business being affected, but you got to believe that it affects mine, and it's more than just the fuel. There are times when they go out to start their airplane, and their airplane won't start, so I can sell a battery or a starter or a Bendix or something of the like. So it is affecting. I'm surely not complaining. What I want to do is that I hear that there's a couple of commissioners, which I'm happy to hear, that are for doing whatever needs to be done so that there's a restaurant on the field. And so I'm figure that whatever I have to say might help if there's somebody else that's on the fence. I would like to see, I've been a general contractor for 30 years, so I understand, and I specifically, not residential, but commercial. So I understand all the problems connected therewith, the bathrooms, the flooring. Very difficult to do things with a tenant in play. I understand that. I understand some of the problems. But from what I can see as far as the exterior structure of the building, our best bet, if I was counseling here, I would counsel that we repair the building, even with replacing those trusses and those rafter tails, and even if we did the whole roof all new and reinforced it, I think we'd still be better off. I wouldn't see it any more than a 20-year. Mike is correct in that this, with a flat roof, with penetrations, and a air conditioning unit up there vibrating, harmonic vibration, you're going to have problems. It's not going to last any more than 20 years, but in 20 years, it's a different story. What I do believe is that it can, that money, the amount of money, the investment can be recouped over the course of time, and it's not just in dollars and cents of rent, but the peripheral businesses that if my business is taking a hit, and Mr. Bush just admitted that his is also, and I imagine Skydive to some degree also is probably losing some flow of traffic, because the name of the game here is anchor tenants. When you have something that brings people, like, don't ever expect a Chili's or a McDonald's or anything else, because they're looking for anchor tenants, and they only park, like the demographics you're talking about, where there are anchor tenants that bring in an influx of people. That's why the corner of 10th Street and 101, there's not a restaurant in there, and there's dozens of them. Not a one of them that there's not a waiting line come 5 to 7 o'clock in the evening, because of the Lowe's and because of Marshall's and because of the anchor tenants that are there. So I think repair is probably the smart thing to do. However, you got to get around it. The other thing is about cost. Cost, when it comes to the government, is always there because we have what's called prevailing wage. So I could do a business or a restaurant for someone for X number of dollars, and I need 30% more, at least 30% more, to do it for the government. Same job, same effort, but I need that much more because of prevailing wage and how things have to be done properly, and you just about have to hire a secretary to take care of all the paperwork, to keep all the paperwork flowing and stuff, and have somebody there that's always on site for safety and the safety meetings and the extra gear that's required. So the point is, not to get into that, is just that thank you for leaning towards restoring that. I see the issues there. Those bathrooms have been out of date for a long time. It's all city property. It's all city property. And Gordon or Mr. Machado, I appreciate the fact that you don't want to see us subsidize the private sector, because that's basically what you're doing. But you are the landlords. And so some of this comes to roost. Mike hasn't said it yet, but I know that some of this comes to roost because the city or government landlords, which you are, fall into a different category than myself. I'm a landlord. I have 11 rentals. But they're different than if it was the government renting them out. You fall under a different category. And even like with the State Contractors Board, it's a different thing. I could pay for a bid if I wanted to, but if it's, the government falls into a different set of circumstances. That's why the expense is there. Anyway, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Just to add it along this line of people coming in the airport, I was bumming around the airport Sunday afternoon, and a guy flew in his Quickie 2 that I had talked to at the air show. And so I went out just to say hello, and he says, "What's going on with the restaurant?" He says, "I flew all the way from Livermore over here to get something to eat and have a fun flight, and I just checked the weather. Watsonville socked in, so he says, I guess I'll have to go back to Livermore to have lunch." So,
You will not get an argument out of me
Right.
that people desire the restaurant, and the restaurant
Yep.
is a benefit to the airport.
Yep.
The only question I have is how much money are we comfortable putting up, and how much of the reserves to fall back on, where if we have an emergency, we're comfortable putting up
Mr. Chairman.
to fix this stuff.
Yes.
So I can go to engineering, I can try to get specs out of them in a reasonable amount of time, and bring them back to you. And that'll be as accurate as a guess of how much it's going to cost as we can get without going out to bid.
Yeah, Mike, that was what I was asking to ask. I don't think we have enough information tonight to make any kind of a decision, any logical decision. And I was also maybe even suggest that maybe have a subcommittee of the commission to work with you to come up with some, not only the cost factor, but some alternates to the whole situation, and come back to the commission next month with a, a presentation that we can bite into. And try to expedite
I'm all for that.
Try to expedite it.
Well, I think what I'm hearing, most of the, I think all the commission is in favor of possibly fixing the building, over building a new one.
Correct.
And against not having a building at all. Am I correct?
I think you're correct.
That's what I'm hearing.
I'd like to just, I know somebody asked earlier, what do you think, and I never got around to what I think, but I certainly understand and sympathize with the business people here, and I agree that a restaurant's a great thing. I've been a little pushy about the numbers because I think we ought to make sure that we can afford it and that we get payback. You can't just do it to where we're doing it, out of the goodness of our hearts. And it sounds to me, personally, based on what you've said, I don't think we're going to come up with any better numbers unless it's just way out of line. It almost sounds like we ought to just do it, to me. But if you want to, if you think we need more information, that's fine, too. I'm just, every month that we put off moving on it is another $2,500 we don't get, so to speak.
Next month, over the next month, I'll get with engineering and I'll get the specs done. I mean, that's moving forward. 'Cause we've
Okay.
got to have the specs before we can
So
put together
we
the
basically
bid
wouldn't be losing
package.
time, assuming we do go ahead. So I
No.
think that's a good idea.
So
That sounds.
I will do that, and I'll withhold presenting anything to council till some date in the future when we need to do an appropriation for a project and approval for a project. Sound like a plan? Okay.
Okay. All right, the next item is the remaining Mercury Drive to Laws Drive. Is that-
Yes, Councilman Scatini asked us, directed staff to rename Mercury Drive to Laws Drive in honor of Jim Laws of San Benito Air Service. As such, the resolution is going to be before the City Council on the 5th. So if anybody wants to chime in and let me know what they think, I'll make sure to share your opinions with them.
So is this gentleman still a tenant? Is he still alive? Is he?
I believe he's still alive,
He
but he's
is
no
still
longer a
alive.
tenant.
Yeah, I know for a fact he is still alive.
Yeah, Mr. Law's alive.
They walk my neighborhood every day.
Yeah.
We name things for people even while they're still alive?
Mr. Weatherly's still alive,
No, that's true.
so
I
yes.
guess we do. Okay.
Two minutes.
Okay. Okay, items for next agenda.
Back up.
Hold on.
Do we need a motion on this from the commission?
I would like to let them know that you guys had a motion on this.
All motion.
Second.
Have a motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Who had the
Okay,
second?
Motion carried.
Gordon?
Ben, a second.
Sherry? Thank you.
Okay. You ready for items for next agenda?
Yes.
Okay, I guess the,
Update on your show.
I'll report back on the dates.
Mhm. Let's see. Freeze over council, we need that, construction, that's done. We're gonna add, I don't know if it's in the jurisdiction of the commission to talk about leases? The city-
We can certainly discuss it here, or if Mr. Bush would like to come by my office, I can talk to him. I wish he would have come by the office. I mean, today wasn't a good day. Unfortunately, we had a hazmat, and I got called away, and I apologize. I was out there for 3.5 hours, and it should have taken 5 minutes. But anyway, I will be at the office most of the day tomorrow. I have a 8 a.m. meeting down here. Other than that, I'm planning on being out there. So
Yeah, I don't-
we can definitely do that, or we can discuss it in public, whatever you'd like to do, or we can do both.
Preliminary.
So I'll just leave it on there, and if Mr. Bush wants to come by and talk and wants to remove it. Do you have a problem with him removing it?
We
As
can-
long,
it can
long
always
as it
be-
gets settled,
Great.
It
Otherwise,
doesn't
it's
need-
on there for the next meeting.
yeah.
So I think the proper way would be administration to explain the situation.
No problem.
Yeah. What about the restaurant? That need to go on for next month?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
I think that one's going to be there for a while. Just a guess.
Okay. So that's it.
I'd actually like to add some of the budget. I have a couple of questions that might free up some money.
Okay, so which budget in particular?
Basically, the airport budget,
The FAA budget, the air show budget, or the airport budget?
airport.
So one. Yes?
What's that?
Oh, the 601 account.
Yeah.
Yes, 601.
You have some questions?
I have some questions on it that might free up a little bit of money for us.
Okay. Go ahead. Oh, you want to put on the next agenda?
Do you want to, we can cover it tonight.
Okay.
No, we can't.
Can't do that.
Items on the next
Fred's
agenda.
trying to get us in trouble.
Yeah.
Going off on a tangent here, sorry about that. Okay. Okay, next meeting date, August 28th.
That's correct.
And that's it.
I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Do I have a second now?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carried.